Welcome to In the Loop, a podcast from Plus One Robotics that spans the learning gap between warehouse automation and the technology that is driving the robotics industry. Learn from experts in industrial automation on how the supply chain is transforming as industry leaders explain their contributions to the robotics ecosystem. Listen in and stay in the loop, powered by Plus One Robotics.
Hello, everybody. This is Brent Barcey of Plus One Robotics. You're either watching or listening to our podcast here called In the Loop. I'm here with Peter Holt. He is the chairman and CEO of HoltCat, co-founder of Iron Spring Ventures, and most importantly to us San Antonians, he is the managing partner of the San Antonio Spurs. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it. We're here to talk about, you're probably wondering what the hell is a tech company doing, talking to the founder of HoltCat and all these things. Well, we're talking about San Antonio, and I asked Peter to come in just to kind of talk about the city, what the city's up to, the tech scene, and just really what San Antonio is bringing to the table as far as young people moving here and corporations. So Peter, I'm going to throw it to you for a second just to kind of talk about what do you think about the city and where it's at and where it's been over the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased. I'm basically from San Antonio, but have a little bit of a interesting perspective in the fact that I was actually born in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is on the Gulf Coast, and then grew up kind of on a horse farm about an hour north of here. So I was kind of a half country kid, half city kid. Always went to school in town, but grew up in the country. And so San Antonio's home. That's where I'm raising my family. And so I'm definitely biased. But, I've been lucky in my family experience, in my friend experience, to travel to a lot of places. And I think that San Antonio is a city on the rise. I think that with some very unique components that other cities and other regions don't have, that position us incredibly well for the next couple decades. A couple of those things, first and foremost, is we have a real culture here. A lot of cities, this is probably going to sound judgmental, but they say they have a culture, but a lot of that culture is derived based on other cultures.
Right.
And San Antonio is truly kind of this Tex-Mex, Hispanic American. It's just such a core part of our foundation that goes back hundreds of years that really, I think, shapes a lot of the core values of San Antonio in this region. One of them just being fun and joy.
Right.
Another one is being kindness and caring. And then another one probably is service. And lastly, I would probably say hard work. And so you see that in a lot of the industries that have kind of burgeoned here, whether that's military, whether that's manufacturing, whether that's the service industry, hospitality, tourism, the medical and biomedical. Like, these are some industries that are flourishing here that I think are built on some of those foundational core values. And now we're seeing, luckily, some new ones burgeon, right? Whether that's the tech industry, hardware, software, that's some kind of advanced cybersecurity industry starting to develop. I think it's really exciting, but that kind of cultural component, food, art, fun, entertainment, fiesta, like there's some components here that are truly different than not only cities in the U.S. but globally. And I think that positions us really well. That's different from a lot of cities. And then you start adding in kind of some fun stats. I shouldn't throw out stats because they'll probably be wrong, Brent, but like just the fact that our demos are really young,
right? Shockingly
young. We were talking about that before. Most people probably don't identify San Antonio as being like a young and upcoming city or a college town. But if you look at the actual number of college students in San Antonio and just our demos, we're a really young city, which I think we have that going for us. The other thing is, like I just mentioned, I think our academic institutions at all levels have really gone through a transformation in the last 10 years. If you look at basically every major university, including our award-winning community college system,
Yep.
all have new presidents in the last 10 years that want to be part of the future, whether that's UTSA or Trinity or, like I said, the Alamo Colleges or St. Mary's. They all are part of this progression in our city's history and our kind of living legacy that will make us great. And I think we also have economic leaders and political leaders that we're at a unique time that everybody's as much as possible kind of rowing in the same direction.
I read a stat the other day that San Antonio has more first-generation college graduates per capita than any other city in the country. So, I mean, and you can tell, like you mentioned earlier, or we were talking earlier about it, when you go downtown, it's 20-something.
Yep.
We moved here 2.5 years ago from Metro Detroit. Love it. Very welcoming, like you said. The Hispanic community is a very welcoming community, and it was the best move we could have done. But we always heard it's a very family-friendly town, very affordable. And it's like, that's all fine and well. But you go downtown, it's 25-year-olds that are young professionals looking to live downtown spending money, going out to all these new restaurants. You see it everywhere. So I think that's one of the things that I'm glad you mentioned that, because not that it's a bad rap, but San Antonio gets a rap as, we are a family-friendly city, which we are, but there really are a whole
Some people mean that.
Some
Some people mean that as boring. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Yeah, that's what the people up north are saying about 75 miles off the road. But it's not a boring town at all. And we really come to love it. But I'm glad you mentioned that. The Spurs. This is something that we got to talk about. We got you here. I mean, growing up in Flint, Michigan, just outside of Detroit, we had 4 teams to pick from professional sports teams. We had minor teams, all this kind of stuff. I've never seen a fan base. And I travel the world for my job. I mean, this is like Real Madrid type fandom here in this town. It's crazy. And then you got the number 1 pick, obviously, and everybody's going crazy over that. Tell me about how it just seems like it's woven into the fabric of our company. I mean, every person that lives in this town bleeds the San Antonio Spurs. It's wild. Yeah,
I think that San Antonio, the Spurs are the city's team, kind of both physically and literally, and probably philosophically, spiritually at some points. But I think the one of the big reasons for that is just a lot of what we talked about, that cultural alignment with the Spurs is just, it's true, it's real.
Right. No, I know.
And I think that's what really kind of like makes it so serious and so real. And I think also, like in any, I believe that in any community, sports can be a great unifier. But I think especially in San Antonio, the Spurs are a place where we can all find common ground, and we can come together, no matter where you came from, no matter what you look like, and you can find that common ground in joy and service and fun and winning and competition in, being something bigger than yourself, being part of something bigger than yourself. And so I think that's what makes it so special.
I've never seen so many bumper stickers and or tattoos in my entire life when it comes to a professional or a college sports team. I mean, the city just loves it. But you mentioned, the cultural aspect of it. I mean, moving down here from the Midwest, all these options you had, from Kroger to Meijer to Albertsons, Publix, you're all over the country. You come here, it's H-E-B. Yeah. I mean, that's just, H-E-B is, San Antonio folks are just so protective of the brands, right? Especially of the companies that come out of here and go out and do things in the world. And I feel like it's that type of things that are just, they kind of get interwoven into a company's DNA in San Antonio, because everyone's got each other's back. Yeah. I think you said it's very cultural, but yeah, the H-E-B, the Spurs coming down here, that was a little bit of a, not shell shock, but everybody seems to definitely have each other's backs in this town.
For sure. Especially, I think that, when you're committed to consistency and when you're committed to service to others, then you'll be rewarded 10 times more than you're giving out. And I think that's kind of a little bit of the ethos that we believe in, and I think a lot of other companies in San Antonio, and honestly, some companies that come here too. I mean, look at Toyota, right? Like this isn't their headquarters, but they came in and understood that was part of the culture. And you've seen not only them flourish, but them give back to the city and like their constituents, whether that's people that are buying their trucks that are coming right out of this factory, or that's their employees or family. Like everybody's winning,
right?
And so I think that service to others mindset is like, if you're going to buy into that in this region, then you're going to do well.
I came down here, my best friend in the world, his name's Christopher Leone, his company, when they built Toyota, it was a bunch of Detroiters that built it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to build a car plant, who do you contact?
Yeah.
Detroit folks. So I came down here 20 years ago now to visit those guys as they were the first ones out there moving the earth, and the guys had to carry sidearms because there was wild hogs and snakes and all this kind of stuff. They were from Flint, Michigan. We're like, what is going on down here? But the change that's happened in this town since they put up those walls at Toyota. I mean, I remember when we'd visit him, I'm in 1604 area. La Cantera, the mall, it was in a field.
Yeah.
It was by itself in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
The growth that's taken place, and I think the one thing that San Antonio doesn't give itself enough credit for is we have the infrastructure here to grow.
Yeah.
You go up north, they've got to build expressways like yesterday. I mean, it's really bad, right? So we've got area to move. We've got all these loops that I'm finding out about at a daily basis, right? But we really do have the infrastructure for people to be able to move here and take on another 10, 20% over the next 10 years.
It's a good point, and we can't forget that like, some of the fundamentals of placemaking are like real tangible things, and we're lucky in the fact that I think we do have that. We have population growth, both kind of homegrown, organic and inorganic, and we've got space. We've got great weather.
Right.
I mean, other than August, but from an economic standpoint,
I'll take that shovel snow when you did
from an economic activity standpoint, it's a great place.
Yeah.
And then infrastructure as well. And I think Texas has done a good job and San Antonio has done a good job of putting the right funds in the right places to where our future is going to be just as good as the past. I think one thing that we need to work on from a structural standpoint is kind of our talent, our people, especially up and coming. I think our education system needs some enhancements and some improvements. Some of that we can influence. Some of that needs to be influenced kind of state and fed. But we can't forget that, really, people and space and infrastructure are huge contributors to success. And if we start getting away from that, we're not going to be positioned well for the future, just like we have been in the past 30, 40 years.
Yeah, that and retaining the talent, right? You don't want the brain drain to happen. You had a bunch of kids going to UTSA. Yep. I didn't realize how big of a school that was till I came down here. It's huge. So the last thing you want to do is come in, get educated, and leave, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You got to retain that talent.
Yep.
And in order to do that, you need the companies that are going to move businesses into this area, but they need the infrastructure to do that. So I think San Antonio is well placed to be able to grab some of those kids.
Too, like the one thing that we need to, just be careful that we're not being like myopic or black and white about is I keep saying like San Antonio in the region because I feel like in some circles that's viewed as a binary thing, like they're San Antonio and Austin, or San Antonio or San Antonio and South Texas. And
right.
I guess I'm, getting into my linguistic tamale here, but like to me it's and, not or. And we can have great benefit from a regional growth, and we can help it too. So right. I think that two-way street of mutual benefit on a regional growth is, if you look at a lot of other MSAs or areas in the world, not just the U.S. or not just Texas. I mean, everybody wants to say DFW, but look how the world transitions. Right. It's kind of how humankind and society's been working for a while now. And I think that we can be a great contributor to a growing region that we can also get great benefit for. So I think that we just all need to chill out about like competition and think about how we can benefit and we can impact the improvement of Austin, New Braunfels, South Texas, Mexico. Like the transportation is going to, in my opinion, continue to improve, and we're going to feel more and more connected, whether that's physically or digitally or who knows what's next, So why not find ways to embrace it and like improve our quality of life by part of it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier before we started this up about the doc that you were just on with regard to the Metroplex between Austin and San Antonio. And we go back and forth a lot. We've got an office in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah.
And they just added direct flights on a daily basis out of Austin
Yeah.
to Amsterdam. We're doing a $2 billion expansion here at the airport. So you see some sort of, whether it's light or high-speed rail, has to come at some point between those two cities for us to be able to piggyback off each other's flights, because they've got great flights, we've got great flights, and sometimes I want to take theirs and they want to take ours, right? It's just,
I mean,
we got to make it easier.
Like, I mean, I guess venture capital, I guess I am a betting man, but like the transportation one is tricky. Like, I don't know what I would bet on. I would bet on a multimodal strategy. I think by the time a potential, unfortunately, there's been some disasters in the development of rail across the U.S. There's one going on in California right now that everybody here will look at and say, well, we can't do that. But doesn't mean just because one does poorly that another one can't do it well. I'll say that. But also you've got the Boring Company doing some interesting stuff. Like maybe it's not. Maybe before a train comes, maybe it's a tunnel.
Right.
Or maybe before a train or a tunnel, maybe somebody figures out flying cars. I mean, like I've got a friend in Austin.
We got a company out here doing it,
right?
Right.
You've got some real money going and some real technology. I actually think the technology on flying vehicles will get there faster than regulation will. I mean, a little bit like autonomous cars, right? Autonomous cars is there. It's really just fear and regulation that's holding it back. So I guess I'm a bit naive, but I categorize it as optimistic. I just think that the human mind and the human will find ways. San Antonians want to go to Austin, and I think Austinites want to come to San Antonio.
They do, yeah.
I think that people want less barriers in their life. They want to experience great memories, great relationships, great fun, great jobs, great upward mobility, and they don't want boundaries. They don't want me to tell them, oh, it's too far. Oh, Austin's too different than San Antonio. Like, they want freedom, and so human will, and you're in +1. Like, it will find a way. It will find a way.
No, I'd love nothing more than to take an electric Uber of an airplane up to
down.
Austin to hop on a flight.
Yes.
So you play a good trade, man, because I was kind of going to touch on Iron Spring and what are you guys seeing? What's out there that's piquing your interest? What are you guys looking at? AI? You looking at the next best thing?
I mean, like this may be, I think AI will take longer than people think, and I think that it'll be mostly an enabler first. That's my view. I could be wrong, but I think based on some of the regulation that will start coming out, just generally, you see these big waves of new excitement and new development, and there's always kind of a filtering process, and the winners now may not be the winners 10 years from now.
For sure.
I mean, you can name all the ones books have been written about, right? It was nobody knows Napster anymore and nobody knows MySpace anymore, right? But people know what social media is and people know what streaming music is,
of course,
right? So I think we're in that initial phase. So I think the biggest benefit of AI tools will be enablement, meaning it'll enable better robots, right? It'll enable better transportation. It'll enable better safety systems, whatever it is, which I think will be great. And those are the companies that figure that out first that will go the fastest, in my opinion. But AI is super interesting because the computing power. But it's interesting if you look at like the domino effect of what has led to AI. It was really cloud computing. It was figuring out how to do computing. And by the way, also it all goes back to infrastructure. I mean, I hate people may not like to think about this.
Yes, we do.
But like it goes back to actually what is clouds? Clouds are big warehouses full of really cool computers and things to power them and things to cool them down, which is like water and electricity and so like what I'm hopeful and what Iron Spring really is all about is that people start to know that a little bit more, meaning like AI that will hopefully make your life better has to be powered by something, and there's probably a human behind that, and there's like some inner resources behind that are real and tangible, and that nobody has figured out how to replicate those things. People, talent and tangible resources, and so I hope, and what Iron Spring is really focused on is like matching, or at least just in a little bit increasing the level of focus, energy, dollars that go to the infrastructure side versus the kind of end user side. And so that's really what Iron Spring is focused on. And I think there's some really exciting stuff going on, whether that's autonomy, whether that's new energy investment and resources. I think supply chain, one of the best, I hate to say this, like one of the silver linings of COVID and the supply chain is that people started figuring out like an average person on the street might know what supply chain is.
Oh, absolutely.
When 3 years ago, people were like, what?
Nobody was thinking about how the food got to the store, right?
But what's crazy is like still like what on the back end of Amazon or UPS or Whole Foods, there's still like spreadsheets going on, and there's still like emails going back and forth, and like people waiting for like China to turn on, their screens because of the time difference. And so there's some like real big improvements that can still happen in logistics and energy. I mean, energy, people know improvements can happen, but how it gets done and the money where it goes is going to be important. So, those are probably three real big areas: autonomy, which plus one, we fit that in there. Also in supply chain, and then energy. Those are three ones that are super, super interesting to us.
So you guys own probably more iron than anybody in the country, if not the world.
Yeah.
Are you seeing tech coming into the heavy equipment space where do you envision a day where there's going to be people in offices in San Antonio that are running dozers in India or running dozers in Los Angeles? I mean, is that here? Is that coming?
It's actually already here.
It is? Okay.
Interestingly, Caterpillar had autonomous mining trucks in the 90s.
Okay.
So it's one of those ones where the price and the adoption curve really slows down technology. Technology on a lot of this stuff is already here. Just like a lot of the EV stuff that's happening now, it's been here actually 50, 60. If you look at some of the stuff NASA did, like
for sure.
People had battery-powered cars going way back. It's just adoption, regulation. In our industry and the industries we serve, our biggest concern is two things. One is the cost, the actual hard cost of adoption, and then the softer cost, the change management of adoption. We are serving industries that are the most legacy, that have true hardware complications and impacts of that make some of the other kind of like velocity scalers more difficult. So in a consumer market, obviously there's a million companies that fail before one makes it, but once that like S curve, it can go way faster than the B2B hardware focused industries. And so I think that's where but I'll say just in the last 5 years, the amount of money and adoption and interest and, postings and innovation hubs that's focused on infrastructure. I mean, I probably should know this, but at least 10x number of funds focused on it, number of dollars in the industries is at least 10x.
Do you ever see a day where a 385 or a D8 is run on solar or on electricity? I mean, is that?
Oh, I think in the next 10 years there will be autonomous EV heavy equipment, like no doubt. And when I say autonomous, I'm saying fully autonomous, meaning that there's a CAD drawing that is inputted into the ECM, and that excavator, let's just use that example, digs the trench for that utility with nobody on the site running 24/7. With zero, the only times that it is being touched is when it's unloaded from the tractor, and when it's unloaded from the tractor trailer, so the truck that's dropping it off, and putting it back on there when it's done. That's the only time that excavator is touched. And maybe not fully powered based on the site, because if it's really a new development and there's no electricity there, it's got to have some diesel. That's the tricky part. But say it's a new warehouse that's going here, Port San Antonio. You have power here. I think that maybe it's touched twice, it's dropped off, and then every 24 hours it gets an alert and somebody comes out and plugs it in and recharges it. So I think that happens in the next 10 years.
That's going to be wild.
Yeah.
That's going to be very interesting to see how that goes down. What are the things, we're talking a lot about the companies that are focused here. You mentioned the Techport, we've got DeLorean, we've got us, we've got all these different folks. Are you, for the students that are coming out of college that we're trying to retain here to get the startups going, is there anything that you're seeing out there in the workplace, or folks that you're interviewing or trying to recruit down here from? I'm seeing more and more California license plates.
Sure.
I'm seeing more and more Massachusetts license plates. What is it? What's an incentive to get the hell out of the Bay or out of the Northeast to really to come to Austin, San Antonio to get down here?
I don't know if we need to market anymore. I mean, I think that there's enough structural incentives that are already here. I think the the one thing that maybe is harder to like label on a billboard is that if you come to this region, and I would even put Austin in this region, but San Antonio definitely, South Texas, but San Antonio itself, the one I think really enticing thing for me personally, and I definitely had head start based on my name or based on being born here, but here's a place where you can make, you personally at an individual level can make a real impact. I mean, you can whether that's through service, whether that's through starting a company, whether that's the company you join. We are on a city on the rise and a region on the rise, and I think there's way less barriers of entry here to make a name for yourself, and I don't mean that in like a kind of an arrogant way, like build a brand or like be an influ. I mean, I think you can do those things too if you want to. Like,
of course, right.
But you can do that for anywhere. I mean, like be a part of a patchwork of leaders at all different levels and areas that truly can make an impact. I think that other cities have matured, and the barriers of entry to do that in Chicago or San Francisco or other places, it's just a little bit harder, whether that's the size of the city or the structures that are in place. I think there's a little more open ground here. You can stake a flag and you can build something here. And I think as long as you're willing to have a service mindset, you can do some special things here.
Well, I wouldn't call you an arrogant fella. I mean, I moved down here 2.5 years ago, and within the first couple of weeks, I get an email from you by way of Ty Finley and introducing yourself, saying, "Hope you got a bunch of kids. Let's grab coffee sometime." And I went into Eric's office. I said, "Is this the Spurs guy saying hello?" He's like, "Yeah, that's welcome to San Antonio. That's how we do it down here." So
yeah.
No, I appreciate you coming in. I'm not letting you get out of here without answering. We're on LinkedIn. It's a great tool for business. We use it a lot. You use it a lot. You use it really well. But obviously, I see a theme through a lot of your posts with regard to hip hop. And I was going to ask, give me your top 3, top 5, either artists or albums.
Yeah.
That's in your phone today that you had.
I'll tell you, sometimes I'll say, this is, I think, one of the biggest misnomers that young people have that I try to tell them is that people that have fancy titles or fancy names, they, put on flower underwear just like you in the morning, and that's an overused stereotype, right? That, we're all the same. We're not all the same. That's a silly way to say it, but it's kind of not. And I encourage a lot of people that, like, if they have a question for somebody, or want to talk to somebody, what's the worst thing that can happen? That they say no, or they ignore your email?
Exactly
Sometimes my best friend ignores my text, right? And I don't sometimes I get my feelings hurt, but like, it doesn't ruin my life, right? Like, and so why do we feel as humans that just because Peter Holt is a Spurs thing, or Brent Barcey has a VP title, or whatever, senior leader of everything title, like, that they can't reach out to them, and like, our company has a phone number, and if you call it and you ask for Peter Holtz, like, my assistant will probably screen you, but like, I get those, like, it's she says like, so and so called, and like, do you want to call him back? And I try to call him back, and I would say most people do that, like, whether 100%. It's San Antonio or not. I do think, to your point, San Antonio is a little more willing maybe than other places.
It's not like this everywhere. I'm telling you, man. It's not.
We're better than most, but even in other places, I think shoot your shot. Like, people need to, get over these power dynamics. And the worst thing that can happen is that the person is a jerk and doesn't call you back or is rude to you. Like, okay, that worse things can happen.
On to the next one.
So I hope people do that. And then, the LinkedIn thing makes me blush sometimes. I am not a huge social media guy. I'm not on Twitter or like, go hard on any of those things. But LinkedIn,
nothing to be embarrassed about. That's how we do business. That's how Plus One does business. Through LinkedIn. It's a great tool.
like 10 years ago, the marketing group was like, you need to start doing it. And I was like, I don't want to do it. You just do it for me. So they did it for me. And the stuff they were putting out was just so, I loved them. They're amazing. But it wasn't the marketing group, right?
It wasn't you.
So I was like, all right, well, I was like, I'll try it for 6 months. I think they did like 3 posts. And we like hired like 3 people that were like, oh, like that's interesting. I didn't know you did this. Like, or I didn't know you were in Waco or, something that I put up. And we like hired like 3 people within the 6 months that were like, whoa, like, how, specifically saw your LinkedIn and applied and hired them, and it's great. And then 2 investments came through there.
Nice.
LinkedIn, and one of them failed, but so goes life. Right? But it was a great investment. I'd do it again. But so I saw the efficacy of doing it, and then I try to make it fun, right? Like something, it's not going to stick if it's not fun, and so the music lyrics kind of kicked in. But to answer your question,
you got to give me some hip hop here, man.
Listen, I'm terrible with albums, so
give me,
I don't want to be offensive, but like
give me the groups or the names.
Yeah, Notorious B.I.G. like is sorry Pac, but like I'm a Biggie guy. Jay-Z is killer, and then Drake, and then I
did you go up to Austin a couple nights ago?
I did. I was in New York.
No,
I was in New York. Okay. Yeah, the bad planning, but the guys went up. The team went up, and said they loved it. So that was I heard it was a great show. But Drake, and then there's a new Texas rapper, Big X the Plug. You got to check him out.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he raps mostly about Luka because he's a Dallas guy, but we'll work on him. We'll work on him a little bit. But yeah, but I'm not just hip hop. Like I dig. I mean, hip hop. It speaks to me, especially like business stuff. There's some there's some like layover there, some comparison. It just gets me going. But I dig all kinds of music, and I need to. It's a good reminder. I need to weave in some different genres that I'm down with.
Another thing San Antonio gets is great shows. I mean,
yeah, we do
great shows.
Well, it's a great. If you look at the shows we get, it's actually a great representative because those people are out to make money.
Yeah.
It's a great representative of how
of the city.
How diverse we are.
Yeah.
Like people try to label us like interesting music. Like we used to be, oh, you're a rock city, right? And then, well, you're Texas, you're a country city. But then like hip hop does great here, pop does great here. Like pretty much every genre does really good here, which I think speaks to the diversity of our community, and not only like the traditional diversity, right? Like of, race and background, but like just diversity of thought and interest and curiosity. And like, it's a special component to the city.
I think within a month you've got Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pink, Guns N' Roses, and then Maxwell, R&B. But then
you got Chris Stapleton who's already sold out.
Right. He's coming too.
You're right. Like Katy Perry killed it the last time she came. So I'm down for it all.
No, I am too. I really appreciate you coming on the show. For everybody's listening or watching, we got Peter Holt here. Came in to talk to us about San Antonio and the new tech coming out. You're listening to Plus One's In the Loop podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was great.